The 60 TP is a Polish beast of a heavy tank. It carries a massive 152mm armament that is able to deal 600 damage with a standard shell. It's got pretty solid mobility, going 42 kilometers per hour, but carrying 7 degrees of gun depression and some pretty amazing hull down capabilities. A super troll upper plate, and even the sides can be very troll on the occasional auto ricochet you might get. But the VK-72 just received tungsten shells. And as we know, tungsten shells is great. It gives you more alpha damage, plus the VK also got enhanced sandbag armor, which gives you an extra 156 hit points. So, in today's video, we are going to be comparing the VK-72 to the 60 TP, both tungsten-wielding beasts. Before we break into a battle using the 60 TP, let's break into a brief overview of the statistics, what is good and what is bad. Well, I'm running tungsten rounds and adrenaline for my equipment, so I'm making sure to maximize that DPM. When we take a look at provisions, I'm running improved gear oil, Zurek, because obviously you want that 10% crew mastery, and finally, improved gunpowder. Now, the main reason why I'm running improved gunpowder is the shell velocity is bad. It's only around 780. So, if you're running improved gunpowder, then you can get away with not running supercharged on your equipment and making that atrocious. Aiming time at least a little bit better at 4.8 if you're using V-stabs, and as well enhanced gunlaying drive. You should be running calibrated shells on any tier 10 heavy to penetrate other heavies you're fighting. It's not like you lose a massive chunk of DPM, especially because you'll want to penetrate those tungsten rounds. Now when we take a look at the DPM, it's got 2379. Not great, I'll be honest. It's definitely on the lower side, even lower than an IS-7 and an IS-4. But because you have tungsten rounds and I'm running adrenaline incorporated with that, you do gain, I'd say, about 100 to 200 damage per minute when you penetrate those shells. So realistically, its DPM is pretty on par with other tier 10 heavy tanks, especially because it's got so much alpha. You really don't need a crazy ton of DPM, judging that you can work hull down and you've got all the other attributes of the tank going well for you. One thing that's not going well is the 0.385 dispersion accompanied by, a 5-second aiming time. This is by far the least accurate tier 10 heavy in the game, but as long as you're running at frontline, the gun shouldn't troll all too much. Standard pen at 271 is plenty to work really any ridgeline. It'll be enough to cut through most heavy's weak spots, and if you gotta dab that 2 key to load in the premium ammunition, 363 is plenty. It's a little bit lower than vehicles like the VK-72's 369, but trust me, apart from the golden number, you will be fine with 363. The HE pen is nice, 88, a little bit low for a 150mm, but it does carry pretty nice alpha at 680. The issue is, it's not a big enough alpha increase that I'd really risk using it on any tanks that use Spalliner, so the FE4005, Grill 15, and the Waffenträger. I only risk it when they're not running camos, but any player that I think is decent enough to be running Spalliner, you're actually losing damage on your HE than if you were to fire just a standard shell, so I would highly suggest to stick with your AP, unless you have light tanks or leopard sides, then maybe go for it. Gun angles, it's got 7 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation. Nobody's getting in front of you either up or below, because this tank can work a ridgeline like a beast. Mobility wise, it goes 36 forwards and 15 in reverse, but that's a bit of a deception because I am running improved gear oil. I don't know why Wargaming hasn't fixed the stats so it shows what it does, but gear oil gives you 4 kilometers per hour forward and reverse added. So instead of going 36 now, I can go 40, and in reverse, instead of going 15, I now go 19. And let's say I wanted to get rid of my improved gunpowder, I could then get gear oil, which increases my powder weight even more, giving me better traverse speed, engine power, but another 2 forwards and 2 in reverse. Instead of going 19, now I go 21 in reverse, and as well 42 forwards. Basically the same top speed as an IS-4, but way more mobile on its traverse speed. So that is the statistics of the 60 TP. Looking at the 60 TP's armor profile, we can see just on flat ground, it is an immensely strong vehicle. Its upper plate is sitting upwards of 273, and that means you really need heat shells to penetrate it. Even with Cali, the VK-72 standard cannot cut through. But as soon as you load heat, it's just like an IS-4, and you can penetrate straight through the upper plate. You will notice, though, the turret is incredibly strong. At weakest, it's around 400 millimeters thick, ranging upwards to 500, so you're really not going to be penetrating the the turret. And even though there are weak spots underneath the gun mantlet and around the edges, as long as you use the 60 TP hull down, it is extremely hard to hit those weak spots. As well, the upper plate becomes a very, very steep angle, ricocheting any AP shells automatically, and heat shells are not going to be cutting through 491 millimeters of armor. The real weak spot you'll want to shoot at when a 60 TP is hull down is either the hatch on the roof, that is 226 effective, or you can shoot at the hatch right in the middle, which is around 288. Now, because it's 288, that means that AP ammunition will not cut through that hatch. You can see just how strong the 60 TP is when you use it in a hull down situation. Even the lower plate is incredibly troll because, yes, if you hit it, you will penetrate most of the time, but you'll notice there's a little red bar right on the bottom that if you hit, you will actually bounce. It makes the 60 TP very, very hard to penetrate. Side armor wise, it's okay. You'll see that there are very troll auto ricochet angles on the front plate and as well the back plate that if you hit while on the move with a medium tank or even a heavy, you will bounce every time. But overall, the side armor is very easy to cut through. That definitely goes for the front track wheel, so you gotta be careful when exposing it. Well, I think that about wraps up the armor profile. Now let's actually take a look at how this battle is panning out. I sat hull down for the majority of the game, and now that we're driving out, I had a shell on that WZ-111 GFT, but I decided, you know what, it's really not worth it to waste a 600 damage shell on a tank that only has 150 hit points. Yeah, if it's a dire situation, I'll go for it, but sacrificing a lot of my post-game damage, and as well, just taking away my damage per minute, I find is not the best decision to do in a 60 TP. So instead, I save my shell, and now we're going to get the second one out into the Cephi 4005. Yeah, I don't think that guy's enjoying my company all too much. You can see I've got my adrenaline back, and I'm thinking, do I use it? Is my Progetto going to get the shell out? But because my Progetto is actually a one-shot, he doesn't want to pull around that corner, so I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to take advantage of this as much as I can, and we're going to slap a shell right into the enemy FE 4005, finishing him off. All the enemy team has left is an E75, and judging that the E75 has no kills, and he hasn't been spotted the entire game, that usually leaves me with one possible idea. Well, yeah, he's sitting at the back. He actually moved, but then went AFK in a very weird position to go AFK, mind you. Not. Maybe he got mad that his team went down. I have no clue. Either way, I'm going to put on my tungsten shells and slap him for 670 damage. Tungsten is great. The ability to hit somebody for 700 damage is amazing. I mean, why would you not want that, especially for a tank that only has 600 alpha damage? So in this battle, you can see just how the 60 TP was able to come out with a very solid victory. Now, if I wasn't in that position and I had gone down, it probably still would have been a win. When it comes to the 60 TP and its playstyle, damage per minute is not key, but damage per shot is. The WZ-113 is the highest DPM heavy tank out there, and I was able to get a truly ridiculous game earlier this week of 8,600 damage in the tank. That would not have been possible, and I probably would have lost the game if I was driving a 60 TP. But there are also many situations where I can think where I've driven the 60 TP hull down, like on mines, and you are virtually impenetrable to enemies unless they hit your hatch, and you're slapping them back every time for 600 and the occasional 700 when you have your tungsten activated. That is why the 60 TP is a game changer, even though it might not have the most damage per minute. Plus, it's got great armor. I mean, you cannot go wrong with a mobile, super strong, heavily armored heavy tank that also has massive alpha and decent damage per minute. Moving on from the 60 TP and making our way over to the German Super Heavy, the VK7201K. I can tell you without even sugarcoating it, the VK72 is just a worse tank. Not only is it slower on acceleration, top speed, and reverse speed, going 30 kilometers per hour forward instead of the 40 that I am going, but it's also a much larger target. Look at how much taller the VK72 is compared to the 60 TP. It's rear-turreted, but yet the armor, as you're going to see in a moment, doesn't work as well. So I'm going to be honest, if you're going to grind between the 60 or the VK72, I would highly suggest to go for the 60 TP, as it's better in literally every aspect apart from the 40 damage per shot, which really isn't a huge difference in any real-world situation. But let's see what the statistics still have going for it. You might think that the 2,400 damage per minute the 60 TP carries is pretty poor. Well, the 2,263 that the VK72 houses is way, way worse. In fact, this is the worst single-shot DPM in Tier 10, only the Kron is lower, but the Kron doesn't really count because it's an auto-reloading vehicle. The VK72 does have better dispersion and aiming time at 4.4 seconds and 0.367, but let's be honest, they're not much better, and from the comparability of their guns, I'd say they are pretty close. Standard penetration is exactly the same, and the 60TP only has 5mm less of premium penetration, so also not really gonna make any difference in the battlefield. What will make the biggest of differences is the HE penetration and the damage. Instead of the 88 the 60TP carries, the VK72 has 94mm of pen, but not dealing 680 damage per shot, it deals 960, which, let me tell you, when using tungsten shells and rolling on average 1100, oh mama, that is going to ruin a lot of medium and light tanks' days. I have ruined many 200 LT's rears and Leopard ones. It is amazing to dunk 1100 damage in a standard shell. But even with that, it's still very poor on the DPM. In fact, so bad that your reload is 17 seconds. And 17 seconds barely even makes the cut for the 20-second cooldown on the tungsten rounds. You have 3 seconds after your first shell is fired to get your next round out and penetrate it. Because you'll notice for my loadout, I'm not running adrenaline. Now, why is that? The issue I have with adrenaline on this tank is that it quite easily gets modules damaged. Its track wheels are very easily shot, and I'd much rather be able to repair a track wheel on a German super heavy, especially if I'm pulling around a corner, than get my shell out just a moment faster. It's really, really important. When it comes to provisions, by the way, you can run enhanced sandbag armor, and I'm running that, but instead of getting the extra hit points, I'm also taking away those 156 hit points to get enhanced armor. So I'm basically getting a free enhanced armor and as well improved assembly like the tank used to have. I definitely feel like for the frontal armor, it does make a pretty big difference. When we take a look at the overall mobility, it goes 30 kilometers per hour forward and 15 in reverse, which, yeah, it's not the fastest. It's a lot slower than the 60TP, especially because you can't increase this with any improved fuel. Its average speed, though, is okay at 25 because it's got a decent power to weight of 10.8. The armor profile of the VK72 is the main reason why I'm not comparing the E100 to the 60TP, and that is because the VK can actually use its turret armor in a hull-down situation with the exact same amount of gun depression. So, let's see just how reliable this tomato of a tank is. You'll notice frontally, yeah, it's quite red, and it will get a lot of bounces. You do have a thin bar that will get the occasional bounce here and there at around 240 millimeters thick, but the lower plate sitting at 270. But as long as you have premium ammunition, you're gonna cut straight through the VK72's lower plate. Oh yeah.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh yeah!
Only 282 millimeters, it's going to be very, very easy to butter through that, even with tier 10 mediums. So you gotta be careful. Now, if you angle that lower plate, yeah, it's still a pen. You gotta do a very steep angle. But at that point, you can just penetrate the side of the tank's track wheel. So the best way to use a VK72 when poking enemy opponents is really just poking only the front plate around a corner and hiding your weak sides at a very, very aggressive angle. You might ask, why not side scrape? Well, for rear turreted tanks, this one's pretty poor on its side armor, just using it 23 degrees to the side, and yeah, the entire tank is only about 185 on the boob cutting out there, and as well only about 230 on the overall side armor. Even if you're almost at a flat angle loading heat, you can still butter straight through the side of this tank. So yeah, it's got some issues when side scraping, and the turret armor as well is not amazing. Even hull down, the cheeks are around 235 thick. Now it does have some very troll spots. You can see 847 because of that extremely steep cutoff there, but for the most part, yeah, you can quite easily penetrate through the VK72's turret. As long as you aim at the cheeks of it, it's gonna be an easy pen. So overall, I would definitely say the VK's armor profile is way worse, especially when we compare the side armor. I mean, this is just the greenest tank in the planet. When we take a look at the side, yeah, you're not gonna be getting any bounces on the side. Its track wheel is extremely easy to penetrate, so you gotta be careful when using this tank that you're slower and easier to expose your armor in. Well, enough said about the armor profile. profile, let's actually take a look at what is going on in this battle. My M60 is next to me, which you might be asking, why is he there? And to be honest, I was asking myself the exact same question in this battle. If you noticed earlier, the enemy FV4202 and the other medium came up behind me, which is not necessarily what you want to happen on Canal. That's how you lose the majority of your battles. But thankfully, my light tank decided he was going to push back through D, and those mediums are no longer a huge threat for me. But while that is going on, this battle is still very uncertain. Oh, and yeah, I really needed that to pen, and well, it didn't. Thankfully, I do have my tungsten shells ready for when I do need to use it, and the majority of the heavy tanks on the enemy team are all shoved into the one corner. Now, they do have a pretty good player. They got a Primo player in the Grill 15, and I know that the Grill was last spotted over towards A. So I don't really feel like I want to expose my armor all too much to a Grill that could possibly farm the entire booty of my tank in a matter of 30 seconds. But I decided I have to go. Our team is not going to win this if I sit around here with 2,500 hit points not taking shells. So, because the 50 TP does not have enough pen to cut through my lower plate, well, I can just push right up to this guy and get a big ol' slap with tungsten. Oh, 700 damage there. I mean, that's just what you can get away with tungsten. You have 700 and I think 36 average damage or something up on that number, which is ridiculous when you think about it with tungsten shells. But you'll notice now it's wearing off, and this is where you definitely got to have that second shell ready. Thankfully, that IS-7 makes a really dumb maneuver, throwing 700 of his hit points away and possibly losing the battle. The IS-7 is pushing towards my teammate, and while that's going on, well, I need to make a decision. We're down tanks right now. There's the Grill, which I was pretty highly suspecting to be off to that side. Oh, I need to finish off the 50. Alright, good. I needed to make sure that penned, because if that shell did not pen, I probably would have lost the game. It's a 3 versus 3, and I've still got at least a decent chunk of hit points left, sitting at 1,100. I know the Grill is going to shoot at me, but he misses the heat shell. Hallelujah. Thankfully, the Grill misses me, which gives me the time to push onto this 57 and get a massive ram. This is where using a vehicle like the VK72 with its weight can be great. But for most situations, you really don't get rams off like that. But I can say you wouldn't have been able to do that in the 60 TP. All that's left is the Grill shoots, and well, would you look at that, I get a shell in. This was a very, very lucky battle that I'm surprised we actually came out with a victory with. For the beginning part of this game, it didn't seem all too much, but we did. Taking a look at the after-battle results, we can see the VK72 did a pretty good job. Not only were we able to pull out a mastery, but we dealt 4,500 damage. But I do want to remind you that 4,400 damage with the 60 TP was only a second class. So there is a big difference here between the tanks and how they perform. Now, the VK is definitely not a bad tank. I do think it's a great vehicle. If you understand how to use it, you can do fine in it. Just when compared to a amazing heavy like the 60 TP, it really stands no chance. When we take a look at the players we went up against, we had a Primo player against us that did a very solid job, and as well, another very good player that was over 60% win rate. So I'm quite happy with how we were actually able to come out with a victory in this battle, but definitely thanks to my 183 that was able to absolutely punish the enemy FE4202 and T100LT, even with my light tanks and mediums going the wrong side of the map. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. As I did state many times, I do enjoy the 60 TP more than the VK72, and it is a better tank, while the VK is still a pretty good vehicle, just definitely not as good as the latter. So if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future and other tank comparisons, let me know. But other than that, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Stay happy and stay healthy. Bye-bye.